Welcome back today in our YouTube channel, and today we are going to run a Laravel application inside a Docker container. So in our previous applications, we have been using a tool framework, and we were using a certain custom Docker image. So today we are going to use the same image, but we are going to tweak a few settings inside the Nginx configuration file to use so that it can be compatible with Laravel application. So here we have two applications. We have a hotel booking system which uses database, and also we have a POS system. So in this POS system we have, let me just go to the code and show you how it looks. So here we have the structure of the code, and let me just zoom a little. So you can see we don't have index.php in the root directory. It is located inside the public directory. Here is where we have the index.php. So this one has a different approach compared to the other one. So if we go to the hotel booking system, which is this one, we can see that we have the index.php inside the root directory. So this case is always used when you are running this application inside if you are running this application inside cPanel, since you need to have the index.php available inside the root directory by default so that it can work. So in these two cases we'll have two approaches. So in each file, so we are going to cover for this hotel booking system first, where we have the index.php in the root directory, and then the other thing we're going to do, we'll finish with the other one. So the first thing you need to do is to have the application running locally, and here you can see I'm just running it locally using, let me just stop it, and you can see everything is working fine. I'm just using the local server for PHP, and if we go to this link, you can see everything's just working fine, and I'm using localhost. So we are going to convert this whole application to run inside a Docker container. So what you're going to do right now is to just go to this code, and then we need to make sure that we have our database hosted also inside a Docker container. We need to have a MariaDB. Actually, I like using MariaDB. So our MariaDB will be running as a Docker container, and then this application also will run as a Docker container so that they can be in the same network for them to communicate. So what we are going to do right now is to make sure that we have the MariaDB running. So in my applications, I have, let me just show you where I have defined the MariaDB. So if you just go inside this folder, I created the MariaDB inside this Docker Compose file. So let me just open it inside VS Code. So you can just see well, this is the whole code for the MariaDB. Here is where I'm creating the MariaDB and also the php-admin. Sometimes I use the Nginx, but now I don't use Nginx anymore. But this is the whole setup. You need to make sure that you have the MariaDB container being created here. And also, if you want to access the MariaDB using the php-admin, you also need to run the php-admin container. And here is where we have them being defined, and then down here we specify the network that they are all in. So you need to make sure that you also create this network. So if you go to those containers that have been created, let me just look at it one more time. I'll show you something. So for the MariaDB, you don't have to do anything about it. But if you want to access the php-admin, for my container, I have specified to run on port 85. So if I go to my Chrome browser and then I go to port 85 localhost and then port 85, there you can see I have my phpMadmin. This is a separate phpMadmin, so this is running as a container. And then if I want to access the normal phpMadmin, you can see it is inside the localhost. You can just see the URL here. We have the localhost and phpMadmin. So here is the local database, and here is where we have the phpMadmin running as a container. So in these two cases, we need to make sure that we shift everything from our applications. So let me just go to our application. Okay, let's just go to this hotel management. So what we need to do here is to make sure we change the host to PHP to MariaDB. We name the container for MariaDB as MariaDB, so we'll just name it MariaDB. And then my username I created a username already, a user and a password, who is inside the MariaDB container. So I created them earlier so that I don't take a lot of time. So we have the username as admin and password as admin. So I created the same username and password for both the local database and the one inside the container, so that they can be, I don't have to change a lot of things. So the only thing I need to do here is to change the database host. And then after doing that, the next thing you need to have is to have the docker-compose file that will be responsible for creating the Docker container. So here is where I am specifying the name of the container. I'm naming it as Relaxly, and then we have the path. So you just copy everything that is inside this file, and then I'm specifying the port that we are going to use to access this site. So after doing that, we are specifying the network that we have. Okay, you can have a different network, so you make sure that you put the name of the network here. So the next thing we need to do is to have the Docker file. For me, I'm using a Docker image from Vault KE. This is the one I always use in my applications. And then you specify the working directory, and then these are just packages that I like installing, but you can ignore these ones. But for me, I just like having them here. And then this one is a line which will uncomment when we need it. But for now, we have the index.php in our root directory, so we don't need to copy any configuration file for the Nginx. And then here we are copying everything from this current directory inside the HTML directory inside the Docker container. And then the next thing is just giving them permission, read-write permission, and then we start the whole image, the container. So after doing all this, we just run. So for me right now, let me just open a new terminal. So we just run docker compose app build and then -d, that is to detach, and then you just press enter. So for this one, everything will just be created and it will run inside a Docker container. So this one is creating a whole Docker container. Yeah, so let's give it time and access it after it has finished. Yeah, now you can see the container has been created and it has been started. Now if we need to confirm the port that we are supposed to access. Now it is port 303. So what we are going to do is to go to our browser and type localhost and then port 303. And if we click it, you can see we have some issues here which you can just fix. So what you're going to do is just go to the terminal of that container, and then I'm just going to copy this name, copy that name, go back one step, so cd 2 dots, and then sudo chmod and then -r 777, and then you paste the name of that container, of that directory. So after doing that, we are giving permission. So if we go back to our browser, if you refresh, you can see the site is running very well. Now if you try to access the old application, I think it's this one, you can't access it since it doesn't access the database anymore. We have changed the host of the database, so this one won't work. Yeah, you can see it doesn't work anymore. So you have shifted everything, it's running inside a Docker container. So that is how you convert a Laravel application that has index.php inside, that is running index.php inside the local, inside the root directory. So the next thing we are going to do is to check on how we can convert this one, which has index.php inside public directory. So what we are going to do right now is to just go to the code where it is. Yeah, we have the code here. So we can see the index.php is inside our public directory. So the first thing you need to do is to make sure that we have these two files first. We need to have docker-compose file that is used to create the container. So we specify the name of the container. We have the port here, and also these ones I just created them, but you can ignore these ones. You can ignore the environment. Then you need the network, and just copy everything that is here except this part for environment is optional, but if you want, you can include it. Then the next thing you need to do now is to go to the Docker file and create it. Now we need to make some changes here. We are importing the image, and then we are specifying our working directory, and then we are adding these packages. And then the next thing we need to do is to now uncomment this line. We need to use this line, but for now let me just comment it out, and then I'll show you something. So if we try to create this image without changing the configuration, we'll have some errors, but for now let's not talk about that. Before you make changes inside the Docker file, we need to change our database host, which now will be MariaDB. And then I have the same settings here, which is just fine. And then the next thing we need to do, now we need to run without uncommenting this. So I'll just create this image, this container, and then let me just open a new terminal here, and then I'll just run docker compose app build. Now you can see we have already created the container and everything is just fine. So now let's check the port that the image is running, the container is running on, is port 309. Now let's just go to our browser to port 309. Now I'll just go to port 309, localhost, port 309. Now if I go to this port, we can see the page is not found. So we are going to fix this by now going to this code. If we go to the actual container terminal, I'll just go to docker exec, and then the name here exec. Okay, I'll just type docker exec -it, then our container name is ultimate POS, and then just write sh. Now having that in place, we just press enter. Now we are inside the container terminal. Now what we are going to do right now is to just go to copy this path that we specified inside the Docker file, which is etc nginx default.conf. So we are going to modify this file. Now just go and paste cut and right cut and then paste the path, and you can see we have the file content. Here is the whole file content. So what we are going to do, we are going to copy this code, the whole of this code. Just copy the whole of this code that is inside that file. So I'll just copy until here, Control Shift C, and then that's all you need to do there. So the next thing you need to do is create a file called nginx.conf. So let me just delete everything that is inside this file, nginx.conf. Now inside this file we are pasting the whole code that we copied from the terminal. So after pasting the whole code, now you can see we have specified our root directory is var www.html. Now it is looking for the index.php in the root directory, but in this code that we have, we don't have index.php in the root directory. So what we need to do is to just change this code here and then specify to go to public. So now our root directory now will be public directory inside there. Okay, our index.php is inside the root directory, so we need to change this path to go to the public directory. Now we have everything set. So what we need to do now is just, this line is responsible for copying is responsible for copying this file that we have just created, nginx.configuration. So this file is being copied to default.configuration. So now if you have the default.configuration inside our container, it will be replaced by our nginx.configuration.conf. So but the name will just be the same as default.conf. So now if we try to run this code again, so let's just exit here and then recreate the container, which will docker-compose app build. Yeah, and then let's wait. Now we have finished creating the container. Now let's just go back to the browser and try to access that port again. So if I try to access it, you can see we have managed to access the site. So if we just try to sign in, well, I'll just try to use, if we just log in, we can see everything is working fine, but now the application is running inside a Docker container. So this is how we convert our Laravel applications to run inside Docker container. So thank you for watching and see you in the next one.